Her appeal comes on the first anniversary of his detention, a year marked by legal delays, restricted access, and growing pressure on Museveni's government to justify his continued confinement. Rights groups say the case reflects a deeper pattern of political repression, while supporters argue Besigye's detention has become a symbol of Uganda's shrinking democratic space. Now, we are joined by Mayor Winnie Byanyima, who is the Executive Director of UNAIDS and wife of Dr. Kizza Besigye. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us, Mayor Byanyima. I was actually... I was speaking to someone today, and it's such an interesting reflection because we're talking about what a big person you are in the multilateral space, and you've had to endure this for so long because people just make the assumption that occupying the space that you do at such a high level, that these kinds of things don't come to you, they don't happen to you or your family. Your thoughts on that?
No, I think that in dictatorships, they carve their space and they dominate it and they do what they like and they're above the law. Uganda has turned into a dictatorship, and I don't think that this a strong sense of we are being watched, the international community is seeing us, they do what they want, and there's impunity in the country, and they also flout international rules.
And just looking back at this journey where it began, because and I'm just thinking back of reporting on Dr. Besigye for such a long time that it almost seems as if he spent a great deal of his political life behind bars, being harassed, being tortured, and this kidnapping. What is your perspective when you think about what has happened and why it's happened?
It is true that since he disagreed with President Museveni, we were once on the same side, all of us, in a revolution to end dictatorship, to restore democracy in Uganda. But when things started moving back in the direction of dictatorship, he broke ranks and challenged him in a presidential election, 2001. And since then, you can say that it's been 25 years of persecution, of being criminalized, being humiliated, being assaulted, going into exile, returning. So yes, it's been, President Museveni has made the price of challenging him in a democratic election, the price so high that actually a few people now, serious contenders, enter the race against him. My husband has faced so much persecution, but he's such a resolved person. And now here he is facing treason, not for the first time. He faced it in 2005, 2006. He was exonerated. Once again, we expect that if the courts do their job, they'll find him innocent. But we're not sure. The courts have become also captured, and we see them acting according to his dictates. They make rulings and disagrees with the rulings and goes to Parliament and makes a law to nullify what the courts have just said.
And that was going to be my question. Is there a constitutional democratic landscape that exists for the judiciary to independently do their work? Has the situation improved with more and more people seeing the kind of legislative tools that Uganda has been using to, and I quote detractors, to really, imprison in terms of the freedom or the space that detractors have? Or has it just worsened because people have just accepted that they are in this constrictive space and there is no dissent that is allowed?
President Museveni led a revolution 40 years ago. He came to power through a revolution. We fought, we were his supporters, and we fought and brought him to power as our leader to restore the country to democratic rule. 40 years on, we've done a full circle, and he has established very personal rule. He has changed the constitution that we made, removing term limits, removing age limits. He has consolidated his power and taken power away from other institutions, including the judiciary and even the parliament, stacked it with his loyalists. So today we have totalitarian rule, and no institution functions with his permission. That is the situation in Uganda. And it is in this context that some people, including my husband, have held out and said, no, people died, people shed their lives to bring back democracy, to bring justice, social justice. We will not give up. So it's a political question in Uganda that will be resolved politically, not through this court case of Kizza Besigye. Criminalizing him is just part of a political strategy.
And what would be that solution? What would be that brings about a change to what Uganda is confronting now? Because the question also then becomes, what changed from the ideals that President Museveni had carried, inculcated, from what you're saying, for this to be friends becoming foes, comrades being on opposite ends of a democratic pursuit?
Many revolutions have taken this direction, where a leader hijacks the revolution and turns and moves away from empowerment to a path of repression and personal rule. It's happened in quite a number of countries. It's happening in Uganda. And we are also seeing its impact on the region. 40 years in power, President Museveni has dominated the region, the Eastern Central African region, and we do see a tendency of those countries around the neighboring countries that were also struggling on the democratic path, now backsliding and kind of learning from the bad example of Uganda of democratic reversals. We're seeing democratic reversals in neighboring countries as well. So it's a question of people standing up and insisting on the vision they want of a democratic, of a country that's just, that's inclusive, a government that's just and inclusive. And we're seeing young people leading in this regard. We see them paying a high price. They stand up, they protest, they want to be heard. They are beaten, they are killed, they are abducted. So we're seeing a persecution of young activists. And this is, yes, another stage in our struggle for democratic governance. I am afraid these battles are generational. We've done our generation bit, and the younger generation is also leading now, but paying a high price. I'm sad about that.
Just to your mind, the criticism that the opposition is fragmented, is that a fair statement, or is it weakened, and weakened by what? Because some would dare...
It is a fact. It is a fact that the opposition is fragmented and continues to fragment. But it is not because the opposition are people who want to fragment and not to consolidate their power. No, it is the hand of the dictatorship that causes the fragmentation. It is the cooptation, it's the coercion, it is the use of lethal force that is making people break away from their parties, join the ruling party, and defections after defection, and people also walking away and becoming silenced forever and giving up on political contestation or even political participation. So we're seeing, when you have a dictator, it means they occupy the entire political space and they do not allow competitive politics. So one of the main ways that they stop competitive politics is to keep breaking up those forces that assert themselves and launch a serious challenge on the dictator. So we've seen every party, absolutely every party, from the oldest parties of independence to the newer parties of today, break up into 2, 3, or even 4 different parts. All of them, without exception. And so that is, again, a very classic strategy of authoritarian leaders to dominate the space. And so, yes, parties, we don't expect to have significant parties of the opposition that last long. They keep fragmenting.
Byanyima, just with that thought, that visual in mind of breaking down, breaking apart, your husband being a symbol of opposition and possibly in some eyes opposition movement in Uganda, what has been the impact on you and your family? And you mentioned the fact that he's very resolute, that he's never wavered. But clearly there is also a personal cost, because over the years we have seen pictures of what it's been like to stay the course.
Yes, there is a personal cost to him, that he has paid. Sorry. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so he has paid a price at a personal level, but we really have to take it back to the political question, because it's not just him. In the prison where he is, when I go to see him, I find there some men who've been there up to 15 years and they've never even been in a courtroom. They have never been charged. They are sitting there waiting for their day in court, and it has never come. So there are so many other political prisoners. You only need to come out and speak and be consistent in what you're saying and disagree with the dictator, you'll end up in jail. So we look at this as a political question. We call on President Museveni to release all political... You see, he has now said that he does not intend to run again. After 40 years in power, he says he won't stand in the next election. This is his last election in January. And I am saying, I welcome that as a citizen of Uganda. But I say, take the next step, President Museveni, which is release all political prisoners, because they want to contribute to the transition from you to the next leader. There is a need to have a safe, democratic, transparent, inclusive transition from him after 40 years in power. That's a big change. And everyone, even those in prison, need to shape that. So release them. And third, enter dialogue, a facilitated dialogue, a dialogue that you don't dominate, that's neutrally facilitated, that's inclusive, that shapes the way to having an election that will bring us the leadership of the future. So I think that it's an opportunity he should seize and build his legacy. 40 years, he's done some good things, but he's also hurt many people and made many mistakes. But all of that, Ugandans can forgive and move on if he gives Uganda the chance of a safe and democratic transition.
And in a word, that's what I wanted to ask you. Do you believe that he is sincere, President Museveni, when he says he won't run again, that therefore spelling political reform in the offing and the change that you're looking for?
Well, actually, he has said this before, and he went ahead to change his mind. So I could say that he's said he won't run again, and he didn't. Maybe now but I want to believe him this time. I see that he's frail, he's much older. By the time of the next election, he'll be probably 90 years old or so. And I think he's aware of his own, the limitations of his body and his mind. So I want to believe him that he does want to retire. And therefore, I say, well done. Thank you for making that judgment, but do the next things, which are release all political prisoners, organize a national dialogue to shape the path to the next leader, the transition from yourself, 40 years rule, very personal rule, to a democratic dispensation. We need to change some things. We need to restore term limits. We need to take the military out of, and the security agencies out of running elections. We need to change some laws that he changed to suit himself. And then we can move towards a democratic dispensation. So there's an opportunity. I hope he will do what's right. And key to that is the release of Dr. Kizza Besigye and all other political prisoners.
Winnie Byanyima, we really do appreciate your time and your candor and opening up to us about your experiences and that of your husband, Executive Director of UNAIDS, and the wife of Dr. Kizza Besigye, speaking to us on his plight, but not only his plight, the plight of other political prisoners, of other opposition parties, members who have been prevented from speaking out against what she says was the authoritarian rule of President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda. That's it from Africa World Hour. Thank you for joining us. Until the next time, good night.